Good Erev Shabbos and welcome to the Pre-Shabbos Drasha on Parshas Vayikra here at the Young Israel Lawrence-Cedarhurst, because what would a Shabbos be without a Drasha? We're taking a chance to look at each of the different Batei Midrash. 2 weeks ago, the Pre-Shabbos Drasha was in the main shul. Last week it was in the Glak Gelnik upstairs, and today it's in the teen-based Midrash, the Hashkama-based Midrash, as we make the rounds so that every corner of our shul gets Torah. I'd like to start off by wishing some very special Mazel Tovs this week, starting off with Carol and Dr. Josh Kalowitz upon the birth of a grandson to Jessica and Dovi. Be'ezras Hashem, this little one should bring you so much nachas, so much pride, Metz Hashem, as he goes up to be a Ben Torah, and he goes and enters the Torah lechuppah ulema'asim tovim. A special Mazel Tov at the very beginning of this week to Doctors Betty and Sheldon Greenspan on the engagement of Lauren to Jacob Aryeh. What a special simcha. This is the Mezinka. This is bringing the whole family together. God willing, the wedding should be V'shah Tova Mutzlachas, should be a good and healthy hour beyond the cloud of this time. And thank you for bringing so much simcha to this week. Also, very special Mazel Tov to Debbie and Saul Bienenfeld upon the birth of a grandson, the first to Diana and Aaron Harkam, and a Mazel Tov to the great-grandparents, Evelyn and Stanley Bienenfeld. We miss seeing you all in shul, and Be'ezras Hashem, this little one should enter B'vriso Shel Avraham Avinu Be'itoi Uvizmano this coming Wednesday morning, God willing. Also, a very special Mazel Tov this last week goes to our members, Rabbi Alan and Chayla Rothman, upon the marriage this week of Moishi to Devorah Pinzauer, and to the entire mishpacha. The mishpacha obviously is not in shul to share the Sheva Brachos, but Be'ezras Hashem, you should continue to see so much nachas. The Rothmans are always an exemplary family of what it means to be a Torah family, to be a family involved in the highest echelons of the world around us. And it's so special to see Moshe carrying on in the ways of your father and your mother, to really be that balancing person. Moshe, you've always been that leader, you've always been that human being who's been an exemplar of what it means to have that balance. And Be'ezras Hashem, you and Devorah should build your house, your bayis ne'eman b'Yisrael l'shem l'tiferes. God willing, in a number of years to come, all your children you kamoischem. Just like your parents have the same bracha with all of you, your children Be'ezras Hashem should continue in that way. And I want to just make note that this week all of these simchas are b'hatznei aleches. All of these simchas are much more modest, incredibly much more modest than they ever would have been were it to be at a different time. But we all know that there's a tradition that when there were two sets of luchos which were given, there were two tablets. The first ones which were given with pomp and ceremony and circumstance, and all of Israel, the clouds, the lightning, the whole sound and light show, those luchos didn't last. It was the second luchos which were written by Hatznei Aleches in the quieter way, which actually had longer longevity. Ultimately, the first Beis Hamikdash ultimately was destroyed. It was with a huge pomp and ceremony. The second Beis Hamikdash had in a certain sense there was certain elements of the second Beis Hamikdash which were longer, which were able to continue beyond, even though it was perhaps a little bit less of the pomp and circumstance. And so these simchas, they may have been somewhat muted, but they're certainly not muted spiritually. They're certainly not muted in terms of longevity. And Be'ezras Hashem, we should always be able to come together after this is finished and celebrate one and all together. I'd like just to take a moment to extend our condolences to Sammy Berger, our beloved member, who lost his brother this last week, Rabbi Meir Berger. Rabbi Meir Berger was a rabbi in Fort Lee, New Jersey, a tremendous influence in the Jewish community, and he just passed away this week. And Sammy will be sitting at his home in Cedarhurst. Unfortunately, there will not be Shiva calls paid, but you can reach him on his phone number, which was sent out in the shul announcements between the hours of 10 a.m. and 12 p.m. and 2 to 7 p.m. to call him to see how he is doing. We also unfortunately extend condolences to Dr. Leah Wiesenfeld lost her brother-in-law this morning, and Be'ezras Hashem, the family and the extended family should know only nichumim from here on inwards and chizuk as we go through this very difficult time. Some basic announcements that are going on in shul right now, and in shul means to say in our virtual shul. So a few things to notice. So first of all, around this Shabbos, later this afternoon, there's going to be the Spirit of Shabbos, so keep your ears open as you are by your houses. If you hear music, come out and greet the music. There's going to be music coming to you today, God willing, as part of the Spirit of Shabbos, to get that blood moving, to get the Spirit of Shabbos in the air. Also, I encourage everybody to come out onto their front lawns and on their porches and sing L'Chadodi. We're going to start the Kabbalah Shabbos around 7:05. So sing L'Chadodi. Let's try to hear each other. Let's try to hear the sounds of Shabbos in this muted, isolated environment. Obviously, we can't come together, but we certainly can come to our own houses and sing in a way that we can hear each other. And finally, thank you to Rabbi Taylor, who's been doing an incredible job, put together an NCSY and Young Israel Lawrence-Cedarhurst Havdalah of Inspiration with Ari Green. That'll be this Motzei Shabbos. Tune into the Zoom. The information is in the announcements. It is very beautiful. We had over 60 people last week, and with Rabbi Yossi Schwartz. It's really a special way to end a very meaningful Shabbos. Throughout the week, there are other ways of engaging, even though we can't necessarily be with each other, but it's important to know about them. First of all, we are having now davening at the same time. DASATs, we're having one starting next week at 7 a.m., 8 a.m., 9 a.m., and a Mincha Mariv at 7 p.m. It's very beautiful to see everybody together. We even are arranging Gaboim. We've made a virtual pushka, so we're trying to create a semblance of being together in our shuls. Also, thank you to Morelli Ann Taylor for the incredible work and having a story time every single day at 4 o'clock from Monday to Friday, from Monday to Thursday, with our Moras in our own shul who are telling stories. It's so beautiful to see all the Kinderlach coming together to listen to that Torah. In terms of learning, our virtual-based medrash is up and running. The 5 towns for Rockaway virtual-based medrash is up and running. There's so much Torah, so many opportunities to get involved. In terms of Pesach preparation, the shul has sent out a lot of resources. If you're trying to make a siyum for Bechorim, Rabbi Talabam is teaching every day at 12 p.m. an online class on Maseches Tamid, which is going to be Messiah. There will also be a few other siyumim over the course of Erev Pesach for those in need. If you're interested in making a siyum, please do reach me. Also, we released our first part of Ready for Pesach film series, which is a 16-part video in understanding some of the basics of getting ready for Pesach. Please take advantage of that. Please spread and please use. Also, for Mechiras Chametz, I'm doing 10-minute Zoom meetings throughout the day. I've got special blocked periods. I sent out the calendar to everybody. Please sign up for those. Fill out the forms beforehand. It will save us a little bit of time. And I really look forward to actually getting to see you in this environment of isolation. The shul, of course, is offering many resources. There's a committee for deliveries if you are homebound for whatever reason and are not able to get out for health reasons, for concerns. We have a delivery committee which is ably headed by a very incredible group of individuals. We also have a weekly check-in. Thank you to the incredible individuals who are reaching out to the rest of the shul just to make sure that we have connection over the week. We have a high priority check-in for people who need a little more connection. People living alone. It's that people might be sick, God forbid. If you want to get involved in any of these projects, if you feel you need to have more connection, please reach out and we can triage you and put you into the different committees to help other people. Remember, there are financial resources available to anybody in the shul who is in need. Please see the shul email for a private form which only I will read in order to be able to help people. And of course, we should all be there for each other. Take a moment to think of somebody we can reach during the course of this week. I do want to also thank our incredible office team, Marvin, Becky, Jill, Jeremy, our president, who's been guiding all of this, who've put so much time and gone above and beyond in terms of making this possible, that the shul's able to operate even beyond its walls. Parshas Vayikra. We start reading and we get to the first word and already there's a question. As we look at the first word, we notice there's something unusual about it. Vayikra. The word is a little unusual because although everything is written in the regular size of the Torah script, when it comes to the aleph, at the end of the word, the aleph is small. It's called an aleph ze'ira, a small aleph which is written at the end of that word. And the Mefarshim debate, why is it that Moshe Rabbeinu chose, or HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded Moshe Rabbeinu to write an aleph in such a fashion? And there are many, many offerings among the Mefarshim. I'd like to draw our attention perhaps to the Medrash Tanchuma. The Medrash says a very beautiful thing, and the Medrash is commenting on this and says, you know what? What's the difference between Nevi'ei Umas Ha'olam, the prophets of the world around us, and the prophets of Israel? So the Medrash points out that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu communicates with Nevi'im of other nations, as an example, Bilam HaRasha, Bilam the evil man, it says, Vayikar, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so to speak, chanced upon him, from the expression in Hebrew of Vayikar or Mikreh. He chanced upon him. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wasn't searching to have a conversation with that individual, but he chanced upon him, and that's how HaKadosh Baruch Hu communicates with him. Then the Midrash says, but when it comes to Nevi'ah Yisrael, it usually says, Vayikra, Hashem calls out. It's specific, it's endearing, it's with love. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to be in touch with you specifically. The difference between the Nevi'ah, Umas Ha'olam, and Yisrael. And in fact, the Baal HaTurim points out that Moshe Rabbeinu was having this debate himself. He was saying, I don't want it to make it look like at the beginning of this incredible book of Vayikra that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is reaching out specifically to me. Am I really worthy of that? So therefore Moshe Rabbeinu says, I want to write it Vayikra. HaKadosh Baruch Hu chanced upon me. But Hashem says, no, you have to say Vayikra. I specifically came to see you. You can't denounce that. So Moshe Rabbeinu compromised, so to speak, with a small aleph, where it looks like the word Vayikar as he chanced upon him, but ultimately really is Vayikra, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu specifically sought him out. One of my teachers, Rabbi J.J. Schachter, points out that perhaps there's another way of looking at this Midrash, not just the way the Baal HaTurim looks at it, whether it's an idea of humility of Moshe Rabbeinu. There's another idea at stake as well. And that is perhaps not just Moshe Rabbeinu, but each one of us, at all points and specifically this week, how it is that we view HaKadosh Baruch Hu in our lives. Do we see the Vayikra? Do we see Hashem calling out specifically to us, endearingly, lovingly, in a way with empathy, caring for us? Is that the HaKadosh Baruch Hu we see? Or do sometimes we feel, Vayikar, it's Mikre, we sometimes feel that it's a little happenstance, there's a lot of suffering. There's a whole lot of suffering. We all know suffering. How do we experience HaKadosh Baruch Hu in our lives? Is it a Vayikra or Vayikar? Which is the way we see that? And what is being described to us in this debate is that sometimes intellectually we know HaKadosh Baruch Hu Vayikra, He's calling to us, He's there for us. But experientially, the way I'm feeling it right now, not just thinking about it, the way I'm feeling, what I see when I hear about all of this tragedy, all this difficult, this has been a very difficult week. When I hear about that, when I hear about the hospitals running out of respirators, people who are dear and close to all of us, who, Rahman al-Litzon, are sick, some, Baruch Hashem, more mild, but many who are not. When we hear about these things, experientially it's hard to see Vayikra. Sometimes we have the Vayikar experience of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It seems like it's happenstance, it seems like it's very random. And sometimes it's important to remember that either extreme is not correct. To say that I feel the Vayikra is not true right now. I don't necessarily feel that experientially. Intellectually I know that. And to say that it's all Vayikar, it's all Mikre, that's also not appropriate. What we do sometimes is in life, we have a diminished aleph. We know Hashem is here. Right now it's harder to feel that endearment, that loving nature. And that's the small aleph. The small aleph is the compromise between our knowledge and our feelings. Being able to know and maintain, as Moshe Rabbeinu did, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu really does care about him, really does care about us individually. Even if sometimes that experience and that knowledge is only felt in a small way, and it grows over time as we look back in retrospect and appreciate that. Which leads us to perhaps another element of this pasuk. The Baal HaTurim goes on to say that Vayikra Hashem el Moshe, says the Baal HaTurim, in a very profound fashion, Vayikra el Moshe is the Roshei Tevos, is the acronym of the word Imoy, his mother. In all of this, what is our relationship to Hashem? Is he as our mother? Which reminds me of the most profound insight. And that is that the Gemara tells us in Shabbos that in order to transgress a melacha on Shabbos, it needs to be a creative activity. It needs to be an activity, one of the 39 melachos needs to be creative. The Gemara then asks, so wait a second, soiser, which is one of the 39 melachos, which means to destroy something, to break something, that seems to be a completely destructive and non-creative activity. So the Gemara explains why, because it's really soiser almanas livnois bimkoimai. The destruction which is disallowed on Shabbos is constructive deconstruction. When I'm breaking something to build in its place something more viable. That destruction is ultimately the beginning of the construction process. When I want to make a new house, the first thing I need to do is to demolish the old house, to dig down the foundations in order to build. That's a constructive process, even though it is actually destructive. The Gemara then asks, wait a second, if you're learning everything for the Mishkan, There was never such an instance in the Mishkan. The Mishkan was collapsed, it was destroyed, taken apart in place A, and it was rebuilt in place B. So the Soiser Amanas Livnois Bimkoma doesn't exist by the Mishkan. It was never deconstructed to reconstruct in the same place. Yes, elsewhere, but not the same place. That's not therefore we'll call it the guidelines, the legal guidelines of that melacha. How does that work? So the Gemara answers a very profound answer. It says that, you know what, when it is Al Pi Hashem Yachanu, Al Pi Hashem Yisrael, when Hashem was telling them where and when to travel, it was like it was the same place. It was like place A and place B was the same because Hashem told them to go from place A to place B. Rav Chaim Shmulevitz points out a very beautiful idea. Dr. Yeager pointed this out to me a little while ago. Very beautiful insight in the Sichos Musar. Rav Chaim Shmulevitz says, imagine the following situation. Imagine you had a child that was going, an infant was going with their mother for an appointment in the city. So they get onto the train, the child drives in the car with the mother, then gets onto the train, sits on the mother's lap, then gets onto the subway, sits on the mother's lap, goes to the office, sits in the waiting room of the mother's lap, goes to the appointment, has the examination, whatever it is, comes back, gets on the subway, gets back on the train and comes home. Where was the child? Well, let's ask the more basic question. Where was the mother today? So the mother was in numerous places. You could plot a map on Google Maps where she was all the way along. But where was the child? Where was the child the whole time? For most of the journey, it's true that the child's moving geographically, but that's in relation to the grounds. But the child was really the entire time on the mother's lap. Yes, the mother was moving, but the child was with the mother. Therefore, says Rav Chaim Shmulevitz, Hashem told us, here to there, A to B to C, you're moving. But you know what? I'm moving with you, I'm carrying you. You're on my lap. You're always in the same place. Relative to me, I'm holding you, I'm your mother, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying. That's why Soiser is a melacha on Shabbos. And I think that comes back to the beginning of Vayikra. At this week where we struggle between the Aleph, which is we know to be there in our lives. Hashem wants us and loves us. And the experience of sometimes it feels a little diminished. At the same time, in those same words, is the Drasha Tevos, the acronym of Imoy, the mother, to know that sometimes even when we don't feel that presence, even when we feel distant, we're still in the lap of our parents. God willing, we should have the strength, we should have the resilience, we should have the protection that this week, Be'ezras Hashem, we know and feel we are in the lap of our parents. We should be Zoichim to redemption, Bimher Yomenu, in this Nisan. Have a meaningful, uplifting, and introspective Shabbos.